Here's my smallest incense cedar, calocedrus decurrens, growing in Middle Tennessee, Zone 7A. And it's doing very well. Not putting on too much growth yet because it's fairly young. But I know that it will get huge because I have some other specimens that I'll show you now. Here's a bigger one that I've probably had in the ground for a couple of years. And it gets about half-day sun. And I think it's probably put on about a foot of growth vertical so far this year. And here's another one that's been in the ground for I guess about 3 years or so, and it's probably put on about 1.5 feet, almost 2 feet of vertical growth this year. They really speed up the larger they get, but the great thing about incense cedar is it maintains this nice kind of emerald green throughout the summer, and then sometimes there's a little bronzing in the winter, but it greens back up fairly quickly. And it has, of course, the scale-like foliage, being a member of the cypress family. But according to some of the literature online, it is resistant to the armillaria root rot. So that's why I have it planted so much, because that is a fungus in the ground that is fairly prevalent in my particular situation, since this yard used to be a forest and there's lots of dead roots. So if you're worried about armillaria and you're in a zone that can grow incense cedar, this is a great option for an evergreen. And I guess incense cedar refers more to the wood than it does the foliage, because I don't really smell anything coming from the foliage. And here's a close-up of that scale-type foliage. This one is not old enough to get cones yet, but they get kind of an interesting cone when they get older. And there's nothing really remarkable about the trunk either, but it does have a fairly wide trunk. Kind of hard to see here, but it's surprisingly wide for such a small tree. Here, let's see if we can get a shot of the trunk. Yeah, even near the top, pretty large diameter, fairly full all the way throughout. Just a fantastic evergreen that's definitely underutilized in this part of the country. Of course, it's not native to here, it's native to the West Coast, California, Oregon mainly, although I think it does stretch fairly far inland. But pretty much runs the length of California and can grow in a variety of soil types. Here I think the soil is more alkaline than it is acidic, and it's had no trouble adjusting to alkaline soils. Okay, here's my largest specimen right here, center screen. This one has been in the ground for I guess about 5 years, and it's probably put on over 2 feet of growth so far this year, and it's not done yet. And let me get a closer look. I'd say it's about 15 feet tall, and when I got it, it was about 1 foot tall. So if you do the math, it's averaging about 3 feet of growth per year, roughly. And it gets mostly sun. I guess it probably gets sun until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And after that, it gets dappled shade from a pine tree that's right next to it. So it's doing very well in that situation. Planted on kind of a slope, so not very saturated roots. It can tolerate dry conditions as well. And I think in its native range, it grows in an area that doesn't get much rain in the summertime. So it maintains this green pretty well. Here's a better look at a trunk here on this larger specimen. And further down, just showing you what I mentioned before about the thickness of the trunk. It's probably about 3 or 4 inches wide at the widest point, which is pretty good for a tree that's only 15 feet tall. I have lost a couple calocedrus decurrens over the years. One was during an extreme cold spell when it dropped to -4 degrees, and it was just a small seedling, not even 1 foot high, well, maybe 1 foot high. And I guess that was more than it could handle, so it died. And then another one where I received it in the mail and probably didn't water it promptly enough, and it got too much sun and died. Just user error in that case. That was my fault. But most of the time they're very robust trees. But you almost always have to order them online. And speaking of ordering them online, here's one that I just received in the mail. And if you're interested in getting an incense cedar, I think now is the best opportunity, because I got this from Home Depot. And it's about, I would say, 3 or 4 feet tall. in a 3-gallon pot, and it was shipped pretty well, and it was less than $100, which is basically unheard of for this species. It was shipped from the West Coast and arrived in pretty good condition, and I've been keeping it watered in this super hot and dry heat we have happening right now. A little bit of a drought here, so I'm taking extra care to make sure that trees that are still in pots are well watered. Now, normally you wouldn't be ordering trees this time of year. You'd wait till fall when you could plant them, but sometimes I've found that when a rare tree becomes available, you just have to go ahead and bite the bullet and order it, and then kind of just maintain it in a semi-shady, partial sun area until fall rolls around and the temperatures are cool enough to plant it without it being severely heat stressed in the summer. So that's what I'm doing. This one's just kind of hanging out here, tucked into a nice corner of the conifer collection, waiting until fall when I'll put it in the ground.